Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of TFT Hyperroll with Artark. I know we've done this build before, but as I mentioned in the patch notes, they have buffed certain aspects of it. So I felt that this build was pretty much a guaranteed roll into Hyper if you forced it. It's even more so now. Before we get into it, you know the drill. Bring up the graphic, like, comment, subscribe, do stuff to help the YouTube algorithm because it helps the channel grow. Now you're going to see that this game starts in a completely different direction than where it ends up going. I'm struggling between Axiom Arc and Phony Frontline. They're both really good. Axiom Arc gives you more mana after a kill. Phony Frontline is going to give you a stronger frontline, of course. And as you can see, Animaniacs does not look like the direction I'm going at this point, as I have a 2-star Ashe, a 2-star Renekton, and I go ahead and put in a Vel'Koz. But I did pick up an early Zoe from the NPC round, and I have the makings of a static Shiv, which are key elements. So I'm keeping myself open to various different builds as I try to go forward. Now I have gone ahead and made the static Shiv on Ashe. It's not a terrible item for her. She attacks fast enough that you're going to be doing some additional damage and magic shredding throughout the opposing team, but I'm really thinking in my head I'm gonna be heading into Animaniacs, and this is an amazing Jinx item. For items here, you can go with either the bow or the tear. The bow would work into a Rage Blade, and tear into a Spear of Sojin. At the time I made the choice, I didn't have a Jinx yet. Now I do. So I picked up the bow because a Rage Blade would have been an excellent Ashe item. But now I'm going to be swapping over. So either one is ultimately valid. And we'll just talk about the swap here for a moment. Once I rolled and then picked up the 2-star Sylas, it was time to put him in. I could then sell everyone off, get in a Riven, so I would now have everything I essentially need to create the beginning of this build. Jinx, Riven, and Sylas make up the Anima Squad, bring in Zoe for the Pranksters, and I call it Animaniacs because, well, Jinx is crazy, so it just kind of fits. And I found this to be the most forcible comp before it was slightly buffed, and I can't imagine how much it could dominate now if you force it just every time. This particular game happened during a run when I was trying to force it as much as possible to climb. Normally I would grab the tear here as part of the Spear of Sojin, but I just can't resist the spatula because you have that tiny hope that there's going to be another spatula and you can make a Tactician's Crown. One thing I like about getting target dummies with this build is because the Pranksters are going to leave them out as well when they hit 50% health. It leaves a lot of them all over the board, which leads to a lot of distractions, and when you have a static Shiv and a lot of distractions, you're going to do additional damage to the opposing team. You can see here it's the target dummies that take aggro and end up allowing us to win. It's time for our second augment, and Portable Forge is always a fun risk to take. You might win, you might lose. In this case, it's a win. I can get the Anima Visage, which will work really well on the Anima Squad, but specifically on Riven, who shields herself as part of her ult, so the additional healing that comes along with the Visage will help keep her up. The goal now is going to be to make Riven our super tank. In the middle, of course, we'll need another Riven, so to get her up to at least 2 stars so it can make sense. But as you can see, the team is holding together really well right now. Note when Riven shields, she gets a lot of health back, so it keeps her alive. And then the reason why I like picking up spatulas sometimes is you just get this, a second spatula, thank you Gary, and now you can use any champion you want to form the Tactician's Crown. Remember, it doesn't have to be on the champion on the board. We can give a Sunfire Cape to Riven and then just look for an additional champ to fill the whole thing out. At this point, just grab another Brawler, put that in place to trigger the Brawler buff. As we watch this fight play out, let me tell you about the next 2 videos on the channel. I've noticed a lot of new people joining the channel who are new to TFT, and they ask me questions about ranked, so I'm going to be showing 2 ranked videos after this video in the next few days that will show both how to slow roll and fast 8 strategies using builds that I've used in hyperroll in ranked, showing that, yeah, they actually do work there as well. And while I'm never a fan of forcing any specific build, I generally like to go with a strategy of having 3 or 4 builds in mind going into any match and then seeing which one of those 3 or 4 come out the best given the augments, the champions, and the items. In these particular games coming up, I specifically forced the builds just to show what I was doing. Now back to this game, I found a misfortune during the NPC round, so the obvious choice here is going to be Tear of the Goddess because we want to put a Spear of Sojin onto misfortune. It's also time for our last augment. It's a hero augment, and even though I'm doing a Riven-centric build with her as a main tank, Sleepy Time is just a pretty OP hero augment. To be able to insta-stun 3 members of the opposing team at the start is really strong. Since we have that Tactician's Crown, we want to go with the strongest champion we can find, and Aphelios will do fantastic with Binding Eclipse so that we're also going to be stunning a large part of the backline. And I know that Last Whisper is hardly an optimal item for Jinx. It's really not playing to her strengths, but I had what I had left, and a little more attack speed certainly won't hurt, nor will shredding armor when her attacks actually hit, since she is attacking fast thanks to the static shiv. And since I had the elements for another Last Whisper, I went ahead and put that on Aphelios. Again, doesn't hurt to shred some armor, not necessarily the top item for Aphelios, would rather have Rage Blade, but that wasn't an option. After the NPC round, we get a couple of more item choices. I'm looking to increase Misfortune's damage at this point, and while I'm torn between doing the Dragon's Claw for Riven, I end up grabbing the Rabadon's Death Cap for Misfortune. Here, there's really nothing that's going to work for Misfortune, so I go ahead and grab the Ionic Spark as the final tank item on Riven, which will just solidify her as the centerpiece of the build. I've also picked up a 2-star Zac to kind of gum up the front line a little bit more. I have Ekko, but didn't put him in because he's not up at 2 stars yet. But really, I just want to focus for a second on the fact that Riven is really leading this team. Yes, we have a lot of damage coming from the backline, but the damage chart shows Riven is taking control and has led the team into the top 4. We also find our 2-star Ekko, and at least for now, can put Aphelios into the backline, onto the bench, and then put Ekko in for our 3rd Prankster. One of the things I really like about Pranksters is that it avoids some of these team clearing champs. As you can see, Talia is one of those, so is Misfortune. But when Talia does her ult, Zoe pops out of the way, heals a little bit. They've reduced it, so it's only a little bit, but it's enough to keep her alive and allow everyone else to keep doing damage, which keeps us going so far without losing a match. It's time for our final 2 item choices, and I really want to add to Misfortune, who I 2-starred during the NPC round. I pick up the Spear of Sojin, almost put it on her, but then figure, you know what, let me open the other anvil, and I get a 2nd Spear of Sojin. I could do the Archangel Staff on Misfortune, but I would rather her be casting Fast and Furious, and then Spear of Sojin is just an excellent item for Jinx since her ult does stun. And it's time for the 2 teams that are on fire to meet, and this is an intimidating team. I've gone over before how insanely strong Soraka can be, because not only does she put out a lot of damage, but she keeps herself healed, so she becomes very difficult to take down. This team is also positioned very well because it will be very difficult for Misfortune to take out both LeBlanc and Soraka. While it's technically possible for her to sweep her ult all the way across the board, it's unlikely she'll be able to finish it because both champs are very strong, but she does manage to ultimately execute both of them. And you will see what I mean in just a moment, because while Misfortune generally fires in a single direction, if the champions she is hitting get knocked out, she will change her trajectory and then focus on a new champion. And you'll see it take effect right about here when she wipes one half of the board, sweeps over, wipes the second half, and turns this into a one-on-one. And full disclosure, at this moment, I was already counting or trying to calculate the LP I was going to get from this match in my head. I thought this was done. I was going to win, perfect game, 20 points. I was thinking about thumbnails and how this was going to present because I had beaten this team before and not much had changed. LeBlanc's items aren't particularly fantastic, and Miss Fortune was going to be able to execute everything. You can see right here, she takes Jax out, who is the real big problem. She just needs to do the same thing she did last time, wipe out LeBlanc, turn around, focus on Soraka. But remember how I said how strong Soraka can be? Yeah, she can take out a champion with one shot. What I now want to do is protect Miss Fortune a little bit better. I'm going to move Ekko more in a position to try to get in on Soraka so he can throw a target dummy next to her so that she can be stunned, and also put a target dummy directly in front of Miss Fortune so that will be a target that people hit before her. This will help keep her health up, and I'm counting on her to finish this off. The opponent switched Soraka and LeBlanc, so my strategy with placing Ekko kind of failed there, but the distraction in front of Miss Fortune worked out perfectly. Everything focused on that and allowed her to wipe out a large part of their team with one of her ults. I'm hoping she's going to be able to do what she's done before and finish LeBlanc and turn it on Soraka, but not exactly, but ultimately she does get a second cast in, and that leads to the victory. Now, this particular game, I knew my numbers were really, really close to 4,200, and I didn't know how many points I was going to get. Then I ran into a little bug that has been plaguing it, where it doesn't tell you how many points you got. Just leaves you with those 3 little dashes. The only way to find out your score is hit play again. I jumped forward to where I did that. It then said I had been promoted, so I obviously went over 4,200. You don't get to find out exactly how much until you hit OK, but at least I'm happy. I know I'm in hyper here, and I just made it over. Hope you enjoyed this video, and please, if you want to climb up to hyper, use the Animaniacs build. It's been buffed a little bit since I recorded this, so it's even stronger now. And as always, hope you have an absolutely awesome day.